What am I supposed to do? Percy called from behind the wire mesh between the storage room and the switch room. Watch and learn, I called back. And keep your hands off your wiener, Harry muttered. Toot Toot heard him, though, and cackled. We escorted him up onto the platform and Toot turned around on his own, the old vet in action. Sittin' down, he said, sittin' down. Sittin' down, talkin' a seat in old Sparky's lap. I dropped to my right knee before his right leg. Dean dropped to his left knee before his left leg. It was at this point we ourselves would be most vulnerable to physical attack, should the condemned man go berserk, which, every now and then, they did. We both turned the cocked knee slightly inward, to protect the crotch area. We dropped our chins to protect our throats. And, of course, we moved to secure the ankles and neutralize the danger as fast as we could. The chief would be wearing slippers when he took his final promenade, but it could have been worse. Isn't much comfort to a man with a ruptured larynx. Or writhing on the floor with his balls swelling up to the size of mason jars, for that matter, while 40 or so spectators, many of them gentlemen of the press, sit in those Grange Hall chairs, watching the whole thing. We clamped Toot Toot's ankles. The clamp on Dean's side was slightly bigger, because it carried the juice. When Bitterbuck sat down tomorrow night, he would do so with a shaved left calf. Indians have very little body hair as a rule, but we would take no chances. While we were clamping Toot Toot's ankles, Brutal secured his right wrist. Harry stepped smoothly forward and clamped the left. When they were done, Harry nodded to Brutal, and Brutal called back to Van Hay. Roll on one. I heard Percy asking Jack Van Hay what that meant. It was hard to believe how little he knew, how little he'd picked up during his time on E Block, and Van Hay's murmur of explanation. Today roll on one meant nothing, but when he heard Brutal say it tomorrow night, Van Hay would turn the knob that goosed the prison generator behind B Block. The witnesses would hear the Jenny as a steady low humming, and the lights all over the prison would brighten. In the other cell blocks, prisoners would observe those overbright lights and think it had happened, the execution was over, when in fact it was just beginning. Brutal stepped around the chair so that Toot could see him. Arlen Bitterbuck, you have been condemned to die in the electric chair, sentence passed by a jury of your peers and imposed by a judge in good standing in this state. God save the people of this state. Do you have anything to say before sentence is carried out? Yeah, Toot said, eyes gleaming, lips bunched in a toothless happy grin. I want a fried chicken dinner with gravy on the taters, I want a shit in your hat, and I got to have Mae West sit on my face, because I am one horny motherfucker. Brutal tried to hold on to his STEM expression, but it was impossible. He threw back his head and began laughing. Dean collapsed onto the edge of the platform like he'd been gut-shot, head down between his knees, howling like a coyote, with one hand clapped to his brow as if to keep his brains in there where they belonged. Harry was knocking his own head against the wall and going ha 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 as if he had a glob of food stuck in his throat. Even Jack Van Hay, a man not known for his sense of humor, was laughing. I felt like it myself, of course I did, but controlled it somehow. Tomorrow night it was going to be for real, and a man would die there where Toot Toot was sitting. Shut up, Brutal, I said. You too, Dean. Harry and Toot, the next remark like that to come out of your mouth will be your last. I'll have Van Hay roll on too for real. Toot gave me a grin as if to say that was a good un, Boss Edgecombe, a real good un. It faltered into a narrow, puzzled look when he saw I wasn't answering it. What's wrong with you? He asked. It's not funny, I said. That's what's wrong with me, and if you're not smart enough to get it, you better just keep your gob shut. Except it was funny, in its way, and I suppose that was what had really made me mad. I looked around, saw Brutal staring at me, still grinning a little. Shit, I said, I'm getting too old for this job. Nah, Brutal said. You were in your prime, Paul. But I wasn't, neither was he, not as far as this goddamn job went, and both of us knew it. Still, the important thing was that the laughing fit had passed. That was good, because the last thing I wanted was somebody remembering Toot's smart aleck remark tomorrow night and getting going again. You'd say such a thing would be impossible, a guard laughing his ass off as he escorted a condemned man past the witnesses to the electric chair. But when men are under stress, anything can happen. And a thing like that, people would have talked about it for 20 years. Are you going to be quiet, Toot? I asked. Yes, he said, his averted face that of the world's oldest, poutiest child.